Okay, mouse experiment part 2. So just a quick introduction and recap. Most of you guys know who Grant Jenneru is. He's put together a body of evidence suggesting vitamin A's role in chronic disease and in particular autoimmune diseases. In Grant's opinion, vitamin A may not be a vitamin at all and may have been misclassified. This is what I'm trying to test in this experiment. If the mice do not suffer from any significant disease or malady over an extended period of time, this adds to the validity of Grant's theory. So I've got 3 mice now as opposed to the 2 I had before, and I used a different breeder this time. I really couldn't be happier with the breeder. She was a crazy mouse lady in every sense of the word and probably had hundreds of rodents in total. She bred different lines of different genetics for certain traits, and she was very proud of them. She also shows her mice professionally. So far, the mice seem really healthy. I also have their date of birth, which is a super helpful thing and really just shows the caliber of her as a breeder, in my opinion. So, for the 2 beige mice, they were born on the 13th of December, and for the faun/ginger mouse, it was born on the 10th of December 2018. So, as of today, in Australia, on the 21st of February, that puts them at 70 and 73 days old, respectively. So they were on a regular diet for about 9 days after I got them, partially due to laziness and also just to let them acclimatize a little bit to their new environment and reduce stress. So that diet was Rodent Origin's Completely Balanced Diet, which I also bought from the breeder. It's kind of a, gold standard in the rodent world as far as I'm aware. It's pretty well regarded. So for 10 days, they've now been on 0 vitamin A. And their diet has changed a little bit over that 10 days. So I decided to include black beans and hemp seed, which I didn't give them last round. And that's been going pretty well so far. I found that these mice, after being on a pellet for so long, are really kind of enjoying the variety of foods and eating a wide range of what I'm offering them. Whereas the 2 mice previously were really fussy about what they ate. So that's good. Currently, they're eating hemp seeds, black beans, macadamia nuts, cooked brown rice as opposed to raw last round, quick oats, hemp protein mixed with coconut oil, and nutritional yeast. So the nutritional yeast and the hemp seeds are a new addition. I just bought them yesterday. So far, they're really liking the nutritional yeast, which I'm super, super happy about. I'm really glad I came up with that one. And the hemp seeds, I've seen them touch a little bit, but not too much. As far as concerns with their current diet, B12 is a minor concern and protein is a moderate concern. So as far as I'm aware, B12 is not a huge problem for rodents unless they're reproducing. So I think there's some physiological changes in the offspring of B12 deficient mice. And protein is a bit of a funny topic when it comes to rodents. So in the rodent world, if you're buying rodent food, you'll see the protein percentage is often listed. I think what this is about is the minimum protein requirement for healthy reproduction for multiple generations. I think that's what it comes down to. Of course, this applies to lab mice and lab rats as well, so that might give a little bit of insight into it. But from what I've read from just one study off the top of my head, I think the minimum is like 13% protein, and ideal is like 18-20%. I could be very wrong on those numbers, but that's just kind of ballpark. So the issue really comes if I want to breed these mice, which would really be the ultimate form of this experiment, to show that multiple generations could thrive on a 0 vitamin A diet. That would really prove the theory. Then coprophagia and stored reserves are not such a concern. So the problem with mice is they don't often eat what you want them to eat. They eat what they like, not necessarily what's good for them. So I guess the solution to this would be to turn their food into a pellet or some kind of mixture. I've had a quick look at cattle feed and pellet making machines, and they run in the thousands of dollars. So that's not really a viable option. The other ideas I had was to blend a mixture of the foods and dehydrate them. I'm not sure how good the shelf life would be on that, but it's definitely doable, and I could freeze it and thaw it and store it that way. Or the other option is to make a gelatin mixture and give it to them that way. That way I would be able to control the exact amount of protein that they're getting, because they wouldn't have that choice to select their foods. Of course, animal protein is often going to be much higher quality than plant protein based on its amino acid composition. However, Grant has expressed concern that animal protein may contain hidden retinol wrapped in its protein structure, as is the case with casein. So I think I will try blending their plant-based food mixture together and dehydrating it and seeing how that goes. I think once I actually see it and feel it, I'll get a better idea if it's something that will work long term. So those are the two main problems with the diet of these mice, protein and B12. They may only become real problems if I decide to breed these mice. The other problem with breeding mice is that I would need to keep a male mouse, a buck, at least one of them. The problem with keeping bucks is that if you have them with other males, they do fight. Oftentimes it's not to the point where they draw blood, but it certainly can be. There's a lot of horror stories out there, and it isn't the most stress-free experience from what I hear. You pretty much have to monitor them closely, and you have to be willing to remove them if there are any problems at all. Keeping a buck on its own has its own problems associated with it. So mice are very, very social creatures, and if you do isolate them, they do become depressed. This is pretty well known. Mice can produce up to 30 babies in one litter, so you have to be very careful about how you go about breeding males and females, and you have to make sure that you actually have the capability to take care of their young. There are lots of them. It can easily get out of hand, and I'm not sure if it's something I'd be willing to take on in the near future, but it is certainly a possibility. You might notice that the size of the cage in the mice has changed. I've upgraded their cage. Really, I just want to add anything I can to their well-being, considering they're on such a restrictive diet, and a larger cage seems like an easy way to do that. I've also decided that I'm only going to handle the mice when necessary. Within the first week, I was handling them quite a lot just to acclimatize them to me so I didn't cause them any stress being around their cage or changing their food. But going forward, I think I'm just going to keep it to a minimum. One reason is the risk of injury and the other is stress. I don't think mice ever really particularly like being handled. In terms of the actual health and well-being of the mice, you might notice that one of the beige mice has a kink in its tail. I can assure you that this kink was there when I bought the mouse in the first place. That same mouse did have a slight injury to its leg a few days ago also. It was limping a bit. I think this might have been related to handling, but I really am not sure of when this actually happened. That resolved itself really quickly. So from the research I did, leg injuries in mice are pretty common, and they often can look really dire and drastic, and they fix themselves within just a few days. I've got a notepad which I'm keeping next to the cage, and I'm writing down all the food changes, most of the handling, and just anything else I notice. So there should be a log and record of events that I can always go back to if things go wrong. Speaking of things going wrong, I have noticed that around the snouts, around the nose of two of the mice, they are starting to lose hair. So I did a little bit of research on this, and it seems that mites can be a pretty common cause of this. And also stress. The other possibility is that they are grooming each other excessively. I find that one kind of hard to believe, but it is worth mentioning. I did notice this on the faun mouse or the ginger mouse when I first got it, that I almost thought it might have been a tumor around its nose, but it was just a little thinning of the hair. So it is something that may have been a problem from the start. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do about it, however. I think treating the mice for mites and fleas is a good way to go in general. It just eliminates one variable that could pop up and that is a common problem with mice. In saying that, I have noticed one of the beige mice itching and scratching itself quite a lot, so I think mites could be a problem here. This happened all around the time that I changed their diet, so there is a real possibility that it is related. I'm not ruling that out at all. Changing a diet like that is probably a huge shock to the system. I'm hoping that with adding the nutritional yeast, this might just resolve itself, but I am definitely going to explore the flea and mite treatment. If you got to the end of this video, well done. I should be posting about every week just with some footage of the mice to show their kind of physical well-being and to mention any updates or observations that are worth noting. If you don't already know, I'm posting Grant's articles and ebooks in audio format on this channel, so look forward to that in the next few weeks. I should have Grant's first ebook up within the next month, hopefully. I'll definitely make sure to make some noise about that when that happens. Otherwise, thank you, and I'll see you soon.